Gondoskodás.
Polvoda.
Care.
Proteger.
Забота.
Riaia. Ongeson.
Ter atenção.
Sorge tragen. Niaisu.
Cuidar.
Aruga.
Cura.
Ciao a tutti, è il 3 maggio 2021 e siamo collegati da più parti per questo incontro che abbiamo intitolato Liberare l'umanità dalla sua autodistruzione, l'urgenza dell'adesione al trattato ONU di proibizione delle armi nucleari. Io sono Carlo Cefaloni della rivista Città Nuova, della rivista italiana Città Nuova. Ringraziamo la grande organizzazione del United World Week del maggio del 2021 per questa settimana Mondo Unito, come noi italiani siamo abituati a conoscerla, questa manifestazione internazionale. E questa iniziativa di stasera nasce dal Movimento dei Focolari e del gruppo di lavoro che è stato costituito dal Movimento dei Focolari in Italia, che si definisce economia disarmata. Ora qui Davide Penna, lanciamo un video che è stato già ascoltato ieri nella presentazione del Movimento Politico per l'Unità, nel manifesto del Movimento Politico per l'Unità.
I'm going to show you a short video. Davide Penna is going to speak to us from Genoa about this movement to reject war.
Ciao a tutti, io sono Davide Penna, insegno filosofia e storia in un liceo della città di Genova, faccio parte del Movimento Politico per l'Unità, del gruppo di lavoro Economia Disarmata e sono tra i fondatori della rete di associazioni Genova Aperta alla Pace. Come gruppo di Economia Disarmata siamo convinti che un impegno politico per la fraternità nasca anche dal ripudio della guerra. Siamo impegnati insieme ad altre realtà della società civile nel tentativo di far rispettare la nostra Costituzione e le leggi che la applicano e per questo di impedire che dal nostro paese partano armi destinate a paesi impegnati in conflitti o che violano i diritti umani. Grazie anche alla nostra mobilitazione, il governo ha sospeso recentemente l'invio di bombe destinate al conflitto nello Yemen, in particolare alla coalizione saudita. Siamo accanto ai lavoratori portuali di Genova che profeticamente si sono rifiutati e si stanno rifiutando di caricare armi e dispositivi militari nelle navi della compagnia saudita Bari. Crediamo necessiti di una vigorosa riconversione industriale ed economica, e in particolare delle aziende
and in particular of the state-controlled companies that place Italy among the top 10 arms exporters in the world. So we ask with conviction, together with Pope Francis, to adhere to the UN Treaty for the abolition of nuclear weapons, starting by freeing our national territory from these weapons of death.
Come abbiamo ascoltato, si tratta quindi di un impegno concreto che parte.
As we've heard, it's a practical commitment that begins from a national commitment, which we hope will reach an international commitment. It's a question that has to be faced at a global level, but we each have to start from our own territory, our own country. So it's very important, the initiative that's happened in Italy, where there is a network of peace and disarmament, and in particular, this campaign for ratifying this treaty against nuclear arms. We have here the official representative for this campaign, Lisa Clark. She was awarded for this campaign with the Nobel Prize On the 25th of April, on the Liberation Day, 5 associations, the Foglier Movement, the John the 23rd Association, the Association of Italian Workers, resolved to ask Italian Parliament to adhere to this treaty. We've got a particular commitment to this process from Brescia, where many of these weapons are made. And so we're going to ask Don Fabio Corazzina from Brescia, who's going to, he's also the representative of Pax Christi, so he's going to speak about the motives for this. So, good evening, everybody. Thanks for this availability tonight. We'll speak about the experience of Brescia with another friend with whom we're walking together in this process, a parish priest and a mayor together, working together, and there are many other friends linked to this. I'd like to refer to the motivation for this, for all those Catholics involved in this. The National Council of Pax Christi was received in a private audience by Pope Francis. In that occasion, the Pope reminded us that a few days before, he'd met with the ambassadors to the Holy See from various nations, and he said, in that talk, when I met these ambassadors, I used a very, very strong word. I said, the use and the possession of nuclear arms is immoral, both the use and the possession. And he said, I put that word in and emphasized how the church today, the prophecy of the Church of Peace, can be no other than a courageous prophecy, daring, which risks going against the current. He said, I've spoken, but I know I'm not listened to by many. But the church cannot stay silent. For the Catholic Church, the use and the possession, the menace, the threat to use, the building of these arms are immoral and unacceptable. This is a very strong point. In the story of the social teaching of the Church on nuclear disarmament, there's a coherence and a continuity which is beyond doubt, right from the days in which the instruments of mass destruction were born, and the discussion about their use was discussed by John the 23rd, Paul VI, John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and now with Pope Francis. The line was never to justify the use of these weapons. In 1965, at the Second Vatican Council, Gaudium et Spes, which was on the relations of the Church with the modern world, stated, may people be convinced that the arms race in which many nations are involved is not the best way to conserve peace, nor the equilibrium that they pretend can happen. The Council was very clear. The causes of war, rather than being eliminated by this arms race, can be seriously worsened. And while you spend enormous wealth on buying new arms, it becomes impossible to solve all the enormous problems of the modern world. Number 80 of that document says every act of war which indiscriminately aims at destruction of whole cities or whole regions and their inhabitants is a crime contra God, a crime against God and against the same humanity. And it must be condemned firmly and without hesitation. If on other questions, the Catholic Church had many thoughts where it reasoned in many roundabout ways, on this particular question, there's never been any doubt. It is a crime against ourselves and against humanity, and in no way can it be justified. Pope Francis, on the 24th of November 2019, in Hiroshima, in the symbolic place of that black hole of destruction and death, in the abyss of silence, stated again that the use of atomic energy for war is not only against humanity, but against every future for our common home. It's immoral. Even the possession of atomic arms is immoral. We will be judged for this. The new generations will rise against us as judges against us if we've spoken about peace, but we've not brought about with our actions that peace on the earth. And visiting Nagasaki, where there's this space where the atomic bomb had exploded, Pope Francis had said, in the world today, where millions of families and children live in subhuman conditions, the money spent and the fortunes earned from the building, the modernizing, maintaining, and selling arms, which are more and more destructive, are a crime which cries to heaven. When Paul VI spoke in 1965 to the United Nations, he said, no more war, never more war. Let the arms fall from your hands. You can't love when you have arms in your hand. This year, 22nd of January 2021, when the treaty came into force, the position of a group of Catholic leaders from Bishop Pizzaballa from Jerusalem to Bassetti, president of the Italian Bishops' Conference, all of these people, I'll just quote some of them. Bishop Ricciuti, president of Pax Christi in Italy, Bishop Takami, president of the Japanese Bishops' Conference, Bishop Dowling, previous co-president of Pax Christi International, Bishop Stowe, president of United States Pax Christi. Many of them together wrote a letter. It's encouraging that this new treaty is based on a growing body of research on the catastrophic consequences for humanity and for ecology of nuclear attacks, tests, and accidents. We, the undersigned, support the leadership of Pope Francis, the leadership he's exercising in favor of nuclear disarmament. We're sorry that Italy has remained silent and has withdrawn from the international debate, but we're convinced that the common action by the churches, civil society, local associations, educational institutes, everybody can lead to eliminating atomic bombs from Italy and from the world. Brescia was a chief actor in the 90s in a great disarmament campaign. This is an anti-personnel mine from my own village. We were the world leaders in the production of these near Brescia. In 1997, we accompanied our country to the Treaty of Ottawa to not produce them anymore. And we don't sell them anymore. But 10 kilometers away from Gedi, these atomic bombs are now stored there in the airbase at Gedi. So since the Treaty for Abolition of Nuclear Arms, the world has become a better place. Setsuko Tolo Hibakusha, who survived Hiroshima during the award of the Nobel Prize for Peace to ICAN in 2017, said, when I was a young girl of 13, I was under the rubble. I continued to push. I continued to go towards the light, and I survived. Now, our light is the treaty to prohibit these arms. So I want to repeat to everyone those words which I felt addressed to me in the ruins of Hiroshima. Don't give up. Carry on pushing. Do you see the light? Move towards it. So we have to continue to push towards this treaty for Italy and for the world. May nuclear arms be wiped out from the earth, from the airplanes who carry them, and also from our heads. So let's carry on with this action. Thank you, Father Fabio Corazzina. It's probably a good idea to speak a bit more slowly to express these concepts well and to have an effect on the destiny of our planet. So now we'll listen to Antonio Trebeschi, who's the mayor of Collebiate in Brescia, who's going to speak about a campaign in Italy.
Buonasera.
Good evening.
Buonasera a tutti. Brescia è una realtà.
Brescia is a very complex reality with more than 1,200,000 inhabitants. It's the fifth biggest Italian province, only behind Rome, Milan, Naples, and Turin. In our province is a military base, Gedi, which has been home to nuclear weapons for years and is being now prepared for the arrival of F-35 fighter bombers and the new B-6112 bombs. The Trompia Valley is an important location of the small arms industry. Before they were banned, it was also home to one of the nation's largest companies producing anti-personnel mines, which Father Fabio showed us before. Some of the biggest companies in the arms trade were there. There are major economic interests at stake, but there's also a great sensitivity to the issues of peace, disarmament, and solidarity. At the level of civil society, there's a whole range of associations that promote initiatives for in-depth analysis and awareness, which have the support of the local authorities and organize events, community events, coordinated with local councils and roundtables. Collebiate, for example, a small town of 5,000 people, has held an annual march for peace over many years promoted by the city administration in collaboration with the associations of the Forum for Peace. In recent years, thanks also to the opportunity provided by the wider participation by the main associations of the Festival of Peace of Brescia, the network already active at the provincial level has been further consolidated with the additional involvement of the ACLI, the Association of Italian Workers, Pax Christi, the Observatory on Small Arms, and the Non-Violent Movement. On the 2nd of February 2018, Daniel Hogster, coordinator of the International Network ICAN, a few months after it received the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, was invited to Brescia to present the international work that led to the elaboration of the text of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons approved at the United Nations, and also to show support for the campaign Italy Think Again, promoted by the Italian Network for Disarmament and Denuclearization. This was in collaboration with Mayors for Peace in Italy and was asking the Italian government to move to ratification of the treaty. There was also a public assembly in the evening, preceded in the afternoon by a meeting with all the mayors, during which Daniel Hogster explained that to achieve important results, three fundamental components are needed. There are three fundamental components needed: a clear goal to be achieved, the building of broad and solid alliances, and the third, to be persistent. Nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction. They're not designed and built to be used against military objectives, but to destroy and annihilate entire cities and the communities that inhabit them. As administrators, we have taken action to defend our communities endangered by the presence of such weapons. With reference to the Italian Constitution, we recall that among its fundamental principles, in Article 11, it's written, Italy rejects war as a means of attacking the freedom of other peoples and as a means of settling international disputes. And also that, according to Article 52, the defense of the homeland is a sacred duty of the citizen. So, all the more so, our homeland is daily endangered by chronic deficiencies in health, education, research, maintenance of the territory and infrastructure, much more than by possible military attacks. The investment of huge resources in armaments or structures to support them is therefore unacceptable, even more so today. This was true many years ago, but it's even more so today with the problems of the pandemic. If ever Italy were to be threatened militarily, we would all hope that nuclear weapons would no longer be used legally by anyone. In several towns and cities, initiatives have been organized that have led to the formal adhesion with resolutions of council or city council to the Think Again Italy campaign, including the symbolic signing of the treaty by several mayors. Various local councils that were already linked by their participation in the provincial coordination of reception projects for refugees and asylum seekers All of these, already linked together, agreed to sign a single document, bringing the mayors together in a public show. So the first signing took place at the March for Peace in Pirata, where the mayors of 17 towns or cities took part. The same document was signed by other mayors at the Festival of Rights in Castignano, by the others at the Intercultural Festival Embrace the World in Malegno, and others again at the Peace Festival in Brescia, where the document was also signed by the president of the province and the president of the lower houses of parliament, Roberto Fico, who'd been invited to the opening day. In the area of Brescia to date, 56 local authorities, 167 groups, associations, movements, parishes, and more than 7,700 individuals have joined the campaign. On the occasion of the coming into force of the treaty, January the 22nd, 2021, with a delegation of 10 mayors and 10 representatives of associations, we met in front of the military base at Gedi to renew our request to Parliament and to the government to begin the ratification and implementation of the requirements of the treaty, delivering a letter to the commander of the base.
Ecco, da quanto c'è stato così raccontato in maniera molto diretta dal sindaco Trebeschi,
having heard what's been told in a very direct way, we should go directly to Colle Beato. There's a reality which is very, very present in Italy. Don Corazzina spoke about the commitment of workers and their objections and how they stopped the production of anti-personnel mines, which shows that there's a civil action which is capable of making change. So, with many other people from Brescia, we've got the idea to launch with Catholic associations a stronger adhesion to this movement, which is led by ICAN. And here we have Lisa Clark, who represents ICAN, the International Campaign for the Abolition of Nuclear Arms. And she's going to speak from Florence. So, Lisa.
I'm in Florence. I'm from the land of La Pira. I hope you can hear me. It is very beautiful to listen to all these things that have been done by the mayors, by the associations in Brescia. I remember when we were still at the beginning, we are at the level, very high level. You're the champions of Italy. There are many mayors and administrators who adhere also in other parts of Italy, but in Brescia, really an award to you. Antonio and Fabio have talked about January 22, 2021. Last January 22, when this, you call it the Treaty of UN. It's true that UN is the mother of peace. I consider it also a female word. But this is a treaty that comes from civil reality, and it has convinced states to bring it ahead. But it is born, and I assure you, it comes from doctors who are against nuclear weapons, from scientists who are very much against nuclear weapons, from journalists, jurists, and naturally from Hibakusha. Hibakusha are the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki who have dedicated, after years and years of suffering, those who were able to survive, they have given their life to relive for our own good, to relive that terrible moment. They still remember that bombardment, the consequences in their own bodies, so that no one would suffer again the consequences that they suffered. So I think the heroes of our treaty are these Hibakusha, as Fabio Corazzina has mentioned, but there are many who are still alive, and they are committed to tell their stories, because it is essential to understand that the catastrophic consequences, as Pope Francis wrote, people must be at the center of our thoughts. But for so long, states and in international negotiations were not thinking of the consequences of bombardments. They were always saying, we just give them, but no one would do it. And they're just using words. But if it is a deterrent, they should not use it. So what kind of deterrent is it? So they never thought, they only think of the military power of bombs, even if just the power of impeding the others not to, so as not to attack them, that they never think of the eventual consequences of the use of these arms. So there were moments of civil history, our association, that have pumped hard on this, making very good studies of the possible consequences. This was almost 20 years ago. There was a study on the exchange of nuclear arms between India and Pakistan, not to enter between the US and Russia. And there they saw scientists from all over the world, big international organizations, physicists, chemists who have made a study here about that. They understood that the consequences would be catastrophic, not only for the zone of India and Pakistan, where there would be this exchange of nuclear arms, but for the rest of the world, because that the bomb that will go up will only finish in the stratosphere and will be transported by wind to other parts of the planet, and in the end it would have covered heavens of sky, the whole of Africa, equator, and would lower down also the temperature. Remember when we were talking also when we were younger, that nuclear winter, and for many years we could not even have any agricultural harvest on vast areas of the earth. So we are all interdependent. I'm a scientist, so I share only something, some lines only. But what are all these things that we are seeing? These are catastrophic consequences on the whole earth because we are interdependent. And as we see in the pandemic, Pope Francis has always reminded us this, that we would be saved only if we will be all saved. We cannot just say we save ourselves and we throw all the others on to the sea. So the nuclear weapons this is the clear example of this. the fact that I cannot save myself if I permit the nuclear weapons if they continue to exist. So I would like to say here that Pope Francis has changed, as Fabio made an excellent talk on what the Catholic Church says for years and years about nuclear weapons, but Pope Francis has changed the paper here for the lay people because he added the word possession. Possession is immoral, as Pope Francis said. This is the first time that the Catholic Church says it as a doctrine because that possession impedes, hinders on the part of the states, the possession of nuclear weapons. It hinders having balanced relationship between the state and children of peace. This is an extraordinary reasoning that perhaps not many of us who are talking about disarmament, we have always thought about it, but the idea that the Catholic Church would arrive to this point of saying this in a doctrine, this is very true, so that we can go ahead, so that for us who are in this organization, I would like to talk of January 22, when we have launched an appeal. We asked the church to ring the bell at 12 noon. And many have adhered to our appeal. There was also the support of several bishops who have addressed their dioceses. They have sent messages to ring the bell, certainly at 12 noon. Anyway, the church bells are ringing at the time. But the news were circulated that if somebody would say, what is happening, they could answer. It is to give a welcome to our treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. And yet Italy did not want to sign yet. From that 2016, when this was voted for the first time in the United Nations, that idea to convoke a conference to discuss this prohibition of nuclear weapons, and Italy voted no. It was during Renzi. And to all the government leaders, we would like to ask Italy, think about it again. Think about it again. But then they never gave us an answer. That is why we addressed ourselves to the Italian citizens. And we received wonderful answers from municipal councils, more than 200 municipal councils who adhere to it. It is true that majority of this come from Brescia, but even in the other parts of Italy, these associations were, yes, we are so disorganized. It is not our characteristic to organize. We cannot really put them in a box, but we cannot count how many associations have adhered to this. But Italy must really be against these nuclear weapons, because from the time it became a republic, Italy has always participated, always pushed by its citizens, because it belongs also to the Catholic Church. But Italy has always participated in the main campaign of disarmament, to introduce new conventions, and even the mines that the Father Fabio mentioned. So a tsunami of participants from Brescia, from the factory in Brescia, and it has gone to so many places because these are instruments that are so horrendous, monstrous. They harm our idea of what is human, what is humanity. And the idea also of the humanitarian consequences, catastrophic humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons has obliged, after all these studies that I mentioned, it has obliged all principal main international organizations and to help humanity that is suffering. For example, the World Health Organization, the Red Cross International, the Food and Agricultural Organization, all these institutions have declared that before a nuclear war, they would not be able to help the survivors. They could not remedy it. And so the reasoning that they have continued to give, if we create a situation in which we are not capable of answering to the effects, so we have to stop, we have to impede. And the only way is to prohibit and destroy all nuclear weapons. The coalition that comes from all these civil society groups and societies to convince the countries come from this consideration. I just want to say two things more. I wanted to say, we have noted, especially in the town of Brescia, when we reached the municipal council, nobody voted against it. So we understood the stigmatization is very strong, thanks to the treaty and to the public opinion. So even the one who is very much military, for the military, but before nuclear weapons, they don't feel to approve it publicly, this existence. So this is something important. This is a very strong weapon of our reality. The only thing, another thing that we have discovered is that we have also given more information through education. We made public surveys about the nuclear weapons in Italy. In this last year and a half, the percentage of Italians who respond, yes, Italy must adhere to this treaty has grown by 17%. 87% of Italians say that, yes, we do not want nuclear weapons. And the last thing is that I don't believe that we would be able to conquer public opinion talking of fear, horrors, but rather talking of the fact that if we work together, nothing is impossible. If we are all together, as we have seen in the United Nations, where the nations who are not military, who are not powerful in the military, they have approved also this one. Even us, organizations, by coming together, certain that we are doing something good for the good of humanity, I think we will be full of energy that we can do it. We will be able to do it, to convince more people. And in the end, the government cannot but and say, no, we don't know it. This is how it happened in many other countries. So the next question that we can ask the government of Italy is, if you don't sign this, but you can participate in the first reunion of countries that will be held in January in Austria. Austria is a host country because for always it has wanted and peace and did not want any nuclear weapons. So we can unite ourselves with Austria and form a dual country free from all nuclear weapons. Thank you for this beautiful idea. Thank you for this United World Week, because we need a united world. We never should resign thinking that it is something big. When we are united, when we are together, we can reach something big, something great.
Thank you, Lisa. So, with this idea in mind, our commitment has to be possible, a commitment that goes beyond borders. And now we have Giulia Longo, who's with us from Lebanon. She's part of the John the 23rd community, and she's involved in an interesting experience, which is called Operation Dove, which works in areas where there is war. She's committed at this international level, and she's going to speak about her commitment and how the John the 23rd community supports this initiative.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Giulia Longo. I'm 26 years old, and I am part of the Operation Dove, part of the community of Pope John the 23rd. So our activity now at this moment is in Lebanon and Syria. The commitment to peace was a constant in the life of our founder, Don Oreste Bensi, who was also a great friend of Chiara Lubich. The foundation of everything he fought for was a continuous, profound spiritual conviction that in order to remove the causes of injustice, it is necessary to choose, apply, and live nonviolence. Pope John the 23rd Association is rooted in this. Since its birth, our association has had a continuous and strong commitment to the promotion and development of conscientious objection to military service and to making Italian foreign policy as an instrument of a forward-looking peace for the promotion of nonviolent and disarmed defense. Over the last 25 years, our nonviolent corps has had about 2,000 volunteers who have formed a nonviolent volunteer presence in 17 situations of war or conflict in the world. In this cause, Don Oreste met several times personally with various Italian ministers of defense for over 20 years. He protested and struggled against an Italian policy that while selling weapons everywhere was participating in humanitarian international military missions in conflicts where Italian weapons and not only were being used. A recent strong protest was launched against the expansion of the airbase at Dalmolin Airport in Vicenza. Equally strong is the stance taken by our entire association, by our delegations to the UN and the European Parliament, and by our responsible Giovanni Paolo Ramonda for disarmament and reconversion of the war industry. We stand for an establishment of a Ministry for Peace, Nonviolent Civil Defense, and with many networks of civil society, loudly denouncing the immorality and illegality of nuclear weapons and other kinds of mass destruction, a real scandal for every human being. Unfortunately, We are witnessing very different choices by our politicians. Italy has not adhered to the treaty of the ban on nuclear weapons and did not even take part in preparatory meetings. I thank you for this moment of communion. We are here with you to proclaim loudly the need for our country to truly commit to the Article 11 of the Constitution. With all our might, we refuse to be co-responsible in fueling hotbeds of war, and we will never stop from shouting. As Don Orestes said, people have always organized war. The time has come to organize peace. Thank you. Thank you.
Grazie a te, Giulia. Allora, proprio sempre con questo orizzonte e con questa capacità di visione
And carrying on with this view of things, let's ask Gabriele Trama, young person from the Foglier Movement, who's carrying out his civil service in an organization for studying international geopolitics. So he's going to tell you about how the movement is committed on this question. Thank you, Carlo, everyone. The Foglier Movement in Italy has chosen to work seriously for disarmament, and we believe that the time has come to say no to the growing investments in weapons in our country, and therefore to work on the road that leads to the prohibition of nuclear weapons. The ideal of peace and fraternity that moves us comes from the radical rejection of war, during one of which Chiara Lubich laid the roots of this movement. It's also for this reason that the request we're making to Italy with this appeal to join the treaty is important. We want dialogue and peace, not threats and deterrence. Following the declaration signed by various representatives of the Italian Church on the 22nd of January, we add our appeal. The General Assembly of the Foglier Movement, meeting in September 2014, voted unanimously for a motion committing to dialogue across the board with direct actions in support of peace initiatives so that all wars may cease. It supports those initiatives that counter the arms race in the spirit of the path decisively taken by Pope Francis. In 2015, a working group was formed in Italy with the name of Unarmed Economy, a group of reflection and action to implement this commitment to peace building, a commitment to peace building, which then became a collaboration with other groups in the church and in civil society, some of which are present here. When the Pope was in Hiroshima, he reminded us that certain actions not only affect people and their dignity, but also future generations that will have to suffer the consequences. In Italy, as we said, we've got 2 military bases where we store US-owned nuclear weapons. The use of atomic weapons is immoral, but neither can we indifferent to possessing them. We need to feel the responsibility for this. The slogan of the United World Week, in which we are speaking, Dare to Care, it seems to me very much in line with this appeal. Taking care so that there'll never be recourse to these weapons of mass destruction. Gino Giordani, politician and co-founder of the Foglier Movement, said, rearmament and disarmament are not enough to remove the danger of war. We need to remove the spirit of aggression, exploitation, and domination from which war arises. We need to rebuild consciences. These seem prophetic words to me that focus on the education of consciences, which are able to reject everything that's not in line with these principles. Today, social media certainly can be important for communication, but besides words, people need to be mobilized and openly supported by scientists who can illustrate the real danger being created. In addition to the award of the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize to ICAN, which brought the treaty to the UN, the 1985 Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to international physicists for preventing nuclear war, and in 1995 to a group of scientists for their efforts
impegnava i propri sforzi per eliminare nel lungo
to eliminate such weapons in the long term. The scientists were speaking openly to warn the public of danger. As the Italian Foglier Movement, we've decided to commit ourselves to take up this challenge. We believe that a different future far from the atomic bomb is really possible. The UN Treaty, the result of the commitment of civil society, represents the path to follow in this present global crisis for humanity.
Dare to care.
Dare to care. Daring to care is just that. To choose between two possibilities: the winding down of nuclear arsenals or a totally uncertain future. All of us are faced with this choice. This appeal goes first of all to our nation, to Italy, to sign and ratify the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. Thank you. Thanks, Gabriele. And in this common commitment, this alliance that's being built up between the experience of the church, the civil experience, and the international level, we bring in Association of Italian Workers, which has supported all of these causes with the supporting refugees in Bosnia, which we'll share with them on the 8th of May. So now let's hear Stefano Tassinari, who is the leader of the Italian workers. So I thank Brescia for what it's done, which has involved people in getting more done in this direction. And I think many things have already been said. I don't think I can add a lot. I believe that in the last 10 years, we've become a bit used to the economy of war. And we've seen a lot of efforts in this direction. There's been a period in which sensitivity has been raised. So the March for Peace in Palermo, Geneva, and in 2003, in particular, we protested against the war in Iraq. But in the last 10 years, and above all, the commitment to these questions, the sensitivity in the political world, in society, has grown. The economy has had to reason with these objections to this kind of activity. These themes are still very important today. before the fall of the wall in Berlin, as today, we're still in a condition, a very difficult international situation. We're involved in a global war in pieces, as the Pope said. And these wars are more and more closer to us. There are wars going on as we speak. All the scenarios that there are around the Mediterranean. And if you permit me, I would say our Prime Minister speaking about the problems in Turkey. We have no need of dictators. We've entered into the logic that some things are necessary, that arms are necessary, that arms dealing is necessary. And there is an idea that some states which are dictatorships, we actually need them. I think this is a very sad state of affairs. There's a great danger in this insecurity, in the multiplication of production and marketing of these arms. And I think this campaign is really important because the theme of peace has been relegated to a lower level. We have to discover, Europe has to discover its vocation to be united in all these matters. It's beginning to discover the theme of ecology. But I'm sorry to say that peace is not being considered. The blocking of finance to arms has never been achieved. So it's hypocritical to think that in this dramatic phase of the pandemic, this tragic phase of the pandemic, that people say that we've learned that no one is saved alone, that this should be a turning point. Is it possible that we are not able to reconvert all these arms industries to move towards a disarmed economy, to move towards an international movement that can begin dialogue, that can still allow warmongering to be part of international relations. So I think this campaign is fundamental, very important, and could be an occasion to new investment, because peace is the biggest investment, the greatest investment that can be made in this critical moment, this dramatic moment in the story of the world, and will help us to understand the value of being one, to make an effort for an ecological conversion, but also a civil conversion, a conversion of the economy, as our constitution says. The Constitution of the Association of Italian Workers says we have to move ahead in a logic of construction, not destruction. Today, things are not like this, but if we join campaigns like this, this is also a method of encouraging us towards a more European feeling.
carbone dell'acciaio è nata per quello, è nata per...
The original economic community of Europe was born for that reason, to stop the building of arms.
Non è possibile che questa non sia una
So
campagna...
it's not possible that this fails to be a European campaign, a strong choice of our countries, a rediscovery of the vocation, the international vocation of Europe, which was right at the beginnings of the European project.
Perché credo che come stanno nascendo
I do believe that there's a sensitivity being born, that as this dramatic moment which is affecting the world, I believe that many things that are coming to life, there's a lot of desire to change, to have a conversion, true conversion, and not just in a technological or industrial sense, but to accept and understand better values of peace, the rejection of arms. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stefano. This is the right at the center, is the reconversion of industries, which has to be a cultural, a political choice. And so working together during this appeal, working on this appeal, we would like to come out in a whole movement towards the Italian government and towards other governments, and we'd like to enter into a federation with other associations and all those who are linked together with us and can act in their own countries. So this is a kind of an alliance in favor of life and can actually impose a different point of view. So it's very important, the relationship we have with Catholic Action, and they were among the first to sign this appeal, and how now they're represented by Michele Davino, who's the director of the International Center for Peace. They've just had their National Assembly, so we'll thank Michele for coming, for being with us tonight. So, Michele. Thank you everyone, good evening. Thanks Carlo, all our friends who've spoken earlier. I can only just share what you've been saying, your ideas, your feelings, and the commitment which brought us to sign this appeal. Our work, as was said before, was born from the sensitivity of the teaching of the Church to this issue, but also the documents of the Second Vatican Council, which have been relaunched. Even at that time, there was a clear condemnation of war and also of the arms race as one of the worst threats to humanity. So, in this key of these statements from the teaching of the Church, brings us to involvement in the parishes and the diocese.
Informazione costante, e questo avviene solitamente intorno al messaggio a partire dalle sollecitazioni che ogni anno arrivano.
Every year, there's a message for the International Day of Peace on the 1st of January, and we take up these challenges. And each year, we take on this commitment also as citizens. And based on this sensitivity, for several years, we've chosen to dedicate an educational institute to the study and the promotion of the culture of peace, with scientific research of juridical texts, the value of peace in international relations. So our institute is promoting an international movement for peace. So we're not intending international law as threats, but a call for international institutions to rediscover their role. To be united in the desire for peace, as being guarantors of peace. So to remove fear and distrust from these international institutions like the United Nations. So a true peace is integral human development. This is from Paul VI. Human development is the true peace. The same Pope which said we have to give. We can't base war on the arms race. Peace needs other instruments. We have names like solidarity, like safeguard of human rights, the affirmation of human rights, for the safeguarding of the dignity of human people. We've tried to call peace the name sustainable development, integral ecology, the way of conducting economics. We've called peace a common good, participation, co-responsibility, taking care together of our common home, taking care together of all peoples of the earth, that we're all in the same boat, as Pope Francis said in these last few months, which have been marked by the pandemic. We're calling peace with different names, discernment. But true peace will never pass through disarmament. It needs a civil movement from the base, from people who disarm their hearts. How many times in our cities we find gestures of violence towards one another? The Pope many times has said we have to refine our identity of who we are as human beings, to rediscover our fraternal dimension, which affects everybody, directed to every neighbor. The Pope continues to invite us to disarm our hands, to embrace those around us. This is a commitment which meets our desire for peace. It responds to a call of each person. It's a call, a vocation to each human person, a right, a duty, an exercise of responsibility in this time of globalization. So the treaty for the prohibition of nuclear arms is an important step which needs to be promoted. Since the beginning of the United Nations, finally, we have encountered a necessity for future.
Dell'intera comunità internazionale.
Future of the international community, of the human family.
Questo voto normativo ha bisogno
this normative vote has to be taken up with a practical commitment on the part of states. And so, side by side with that, we need a moral commitment. But this is a practical expression, a sign of our participation as citizens, as Christians, and as it is an unavoidable option for human beings to discover ourselves all as brothers and sisters. Thank you, Michele Davino. Being brothers and sisters, this is the header by which we can, the title by which we can build a new world during the pandemic. This statement of nobody saves themselves alone, whether we've seen at Brescia, where nuclear arms are stored, in Piedmont, where there's another base where warplanes are being built. So this is very, very strong to have this resistance in front of war. The Carazinas left us, but now we've got Renato Zacco, who's connected with us. He's from near Novara, near another military base. So we'll conclude with him.
Mi sentiate?
I hope you can hear me.
Sì, io abito
I live quite close to Cameri, which people have mentioned. At Cameri, they put together these F-35 fighter bombers, and which are built in order to carry nuclear bombs.
Quindi c'è un collegamento qui.
So there's a direct connection. And we try to say this every time: these airplanes are not built for civil use, as was said by politicians recently. There are a lot of money. They could also have a civil use. No, let's be clear. These are planes which are used for attack, and they carry nuclear arms. So we need to inform and denounce this culture, which can be crushed by another message. We need workplaces, we need progress in technology, that other voices. Seeing the images from India in the last few days, there are no oxygen canisters, but there are other kind of bombs which are being made. So with this factory, the investments, if they can not even call a halt during the pandemic, that's very serious. Let's look at what's going on in India. They are lacking these oxygen cylinders, and we've probably got means for life, but they could help out, but they're not being used for this. We have to listen to the victims, to hear their cry, not listen to the fascination of the sophisticated technology that they use to build these bombers. Let's go from the point of view of the victims of these bombs, as the Pope said in Brothers and Sisters All. There's also the desire to live. So with these news which comes from India, where like in an evening like this, where we've got lots of well-intentioned people together, we have to work. And if I would like to conclude, if you give me time to do it, I'd like to say, after everything that we've listened to, I'd like to say 2 lines of
E chi l'avrebbe mai detto? Leghiamolo al nostro impegno, aggiungo io, contro le armi nucleari.
It's a poem by Bertolt Brecht.
Non l'uragano hanno squarciato il grande tronco delle radici, ma le formiche, migliaia di formiche lavorando ogni giorno insieme.
The sense of it is that a huge oak tree can be brought low by the work of millions of ants who are working away at the base. So this was the sense of the poem, that many, many small actions can bring a huge result. The small plants can grow, and this work of tiny ants which can achieve huge results. So we'll conclude this meeting here. So we'd like to tell you that on the 13th of May, with the Foglier Movement in Italian, together with the International Disarmament Archive, has organized a webinar online, which talking about the nuclear challenge of the 21st century. We can talk directly to people from the Foreign Ministry. Lisa Clark will be with us on that occasion. We are also very grateful for the voluntary organization and the dedication to this United World Week. And there are numerous appointments this week, and also at the end of the week, from the 7th to the 9th of May, there's an international event in streaming from Brussels, which is organized as an online dialogue between citizens and politicians. And David Sassoli, who's president of the European Parliament, will be present, and who will enter into dialogue with some young people on the theme of peace, politics,
sui temi della pace, sui temi della politica, dell'immigrazione, tra cui queste istanze
migration, and about the disarmed economy. And then also on the United World Week, there'll be a lot of different content. Access to the vaccine is a common good.
Internazionale. E poi come città nuova io segnalo
as a città nuova on the 6th of May at 7 o'clock we'll be speaking about the legality of the collective legality in the time of COVID-19. So it'll be on the subject of the mafia. And on the 8th of May at 6:30 in the evening, a cry for justice in the Balkans for a Europe of peace.
Quella che è l'umanità disperata che fugge da quella guerra, voglio dire, non ha le fondamenta.
There are people fleeing from that war zone. Let's look to the true roots of Europe, the roots of welcome, education to peace. Let's build Europe on those roots. So let's do our part and understand, as they say, we would like to close our ports to the arms trade, but keep them open to our migrants.
Come contributo, grazie ai nostri traduttori che sono stati infinitamente pazienti.
Thank you to the translators and all those who take part. Julia from Lebanon, all the community of Brescia, represented by the mayor, Lisa Clark, and everybody.
Per chi vuole ci
Thank you very much. Let's stay in contact.
Grazie, ciao.
Gondoskodás.
Voivoda.
Care.
Proteger.
Забота.
Riaya.
Prendre soin.
Ter atenção.
Sorge tragen. Niaisu.
Cuidar.
Aruga.
Curar.